From New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin. Kevin McCullough.
All right, my next guest is someone who, in this upcoming election cycle, is hoping to get a lot of people to think more critically about some of the issues surrounding their political choices going into that cycle. That's why she's the Chief Engagement Officer for the America First Policy Institute, and a reformed Californian trying to figure out if the East Coast is really all that worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and please welcome Ashley Hyatt.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, Ashley, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You are engaging, and AFPI is, and by the way, when AFPI came into existence, I got really excited to see what the potential is. I am very proud of the fact that we have your people on all the time, and you really have maintained that America First kind of focus on the issues, not on the personalities, not on the people, but on the issues themselves. And before we get to what I asked you to come here to talk about, just talk about that mission from AFPI. As you define it, America First Policy Institute is seeking to do what?
So we are really the home for the America First movement, and it is a long-term 100-year multi-generational plan to save the country. And so what we learned in the last administration are the policies that work. And so those policies belong really to the American people. So how do we do things like pass universal licensing in the states? How do we, stop the transgenderism from infiltrating our schools? How do we give power back to the American people? Because that's what it's really about. Our president and CEO, Brooke Rollins, she was the head of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So her whole expertise has really been moving state policy. And that's something that she's incredibly passionate about. So, not only are we playing at the federal level, we have an amazing government affairs officer in Renee Hudson, but who also worked for Kellyanne Conway, who was the chief of staff to a member on the Hill. But we're playing in the states. And so whether it's partnering with, leadership in the Utah state legislature or in Texas state legislature or Florida, working with governors, that is all part of this greater plan to really, advance the America First agenda.
Well, and that's what federalism actually is. It's letting the states determine what they want to determine themselves and moving that in the best direction possible. What I loved about AFPI was that it allowed a lot of the brain trust that powered the Trump policies to stay together and keep working for the good of the American people on those particular arenas. So we have a lot of your guys on, and they know these subjects inside out because they saw them for themselves as they were either, heads of departments or what have you.
That's right.
And they're doing a great job. And I know you're going to be a big part of the conversation in the days coming in the very near future. You mentioned the transgenderism issue. There's probably no radio host in the country that has covered this more than me. But I have to say, I'm impressed with some of my friends in the media, and I want to give a personal story on this. There was a number of years ago when Megyn Kelly was working at the Fox News Channel, and she was dominating the afternoon cycle. She had a 2-hour solo show, only host on the network that had 2 hours all to herself. And she was absolutely killing it in the ratings. And I got to be on that show, I don't know, a few dozen times over the course of the time that she was hosting it. And I'll never forget, one day we were talking off air about, I think it was Chastity Bono that at the time was in the headlines, and it was a big deal because it was a celebrity's child and someone was transitioning. And I remember there being a very kind of intense give and take between myself, the other pundit I was with, and Megyn. We were all talking about the kind of things involved here. And I could sense from where Megyn was coming from that she had people that she knew personally that were struggling with some of the issues that are related to that. And she gave a pretty, I would say, firm defense of Chastity at the time and what was happening. The only reason I tell you all this is that on her podcast in recent weeks, she has absolutely called out the Dylan Mulvaney's and the other crazy way that this whole issue has exploded to take over literally everything it touches, from beer to candy bars to, the classroom. This is now like the obsession of those in the media and those in this administration that are wanting to see it become much more codified into law. We've got a few minutes left in this segment. Actually, I might want to ask you to stay for a second one, but can you give me a sense of why you think this has become the overriding social, cultural norm that they're trying to instill at this point in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in a time where we were told, Sheryl Sandberg, if you remember Facebook, when she had her book Lean In, you're supposed to lean in as a woman, have your seat at the table, shatter glass ceilings, women can have it all. And now we're seeing a complete shift, especially from Democrats and the left, of no longer do we have any sort of identity, and I think this is actually a much greater conversation in terms of if people don't have an identity, if they don't have a source of purpose, they're a lot more easy to be controlled. And what started out with stopping hatred towards a particular group of people has morphed into transitioning children, minor children, without parental consent. And it's about taking power away from parents, giving it to the government. And it's absolutely disgusting what is happening in our country. You look at places like California that passed a law that said if one spouse wants their child to transition, but the other spouse does not, that child can become a, quote, ward of the state. Think about that. You're giving your child to the state of California so that they can undergo a gender transition surgery or puberty blockers or hormone therapy, when in fact, 75% of children who have gender dysphoria do not carry it with them into adulthood. So, you look at it from every single social issue that the left is pushing right now. This is one where the majority of the Americans don't agree on. It's wrong, morally, ethically, on every account. And I think it really is in order to give government more power over individual people.
Well, what you're bringing up here is really one of the scariest aspects of the whole implementation, because it's one thing to say we're going to give people the options to do this and make things available. And I think we should be much more discerning in that entire arena of the conversation. But when you're talking about governmental control of choices and of determinations and outcomes for a child that belongs to a parent. I know that these leftists think that the kids of this country belong to the entire country. I know that they have this kind of warped mentality in their brain. AOC does, that my child actually belongs to her because she's part of the government and they get to determine what's best for them. That nothing could be further from the truth. And our founding fathers certainly felt that way. That's why there's so much self-determination written into the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. But on this issue of government controlling not just the choices and the options, but now the very means by which you come to that decision. And they've done it in ruthlessly cruel ways. The Biden administration, first month in office, said to every school district that doesn't take our guidance on this, we're going to withhold the money for poor kids to be able to eat their daily breakfasts that we're giving them to help feed people. I mean, this is really beyond the pale. We're going to take a quick break and come back, but I want to get your response to that. And then this very, it's not going away anytime soon, and we'll be discussing it, I know, for days and weeks to come.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin.